Hi everyone, I am here today to do my holiday book recommendation. Should we start again? I'm here to do my holiday gift guide book recommendation video. There we go. What a mouthful. I said last week, if you would like to buy a book for someone in your life and you're a bit stuck and need help, to leave a comment in a previous video and I would come back to you with recommendations. That is what this video is going to be. If you would like me to do a generic, beautiful gift type book recommendation gift guide video, then I can do that too, and I can do that next week if you would like. Let me know. At the time of filming this, there are 58 requests on that video, so I'm going to be whizzing through probably several hundred books today, and for that reason I'm not going to be listing everything in the description box down below, which I normally would, and future me is going to hate me for this, I will insert covers on the screen as I go. I'm going to be whizzing through titles, so grab a pen and a piece of paper or take notes on your phone or screenshot as I go if there's a title that takes your fancy. I was a bookseller for 10 years, so recommending books is one of my favorite things to do, which you probably will have realized by now if you've been around here for a while. Before I dive into the specific book recommendation requests, please allow me to quickly recommend my own books because I am also an author. If you are looking for books about bookshops for book lovers in your life, I wrote a non-fiction title called The Bookshop Book, which is all about how wonderful bookshops are and looks at 300 bookshops around the world, especially traveling bookshops, which I love. So bookshops on boats and on buses, the biggest bookshop in the world, the smallest bookshop, interviews with authors about their favorite places. It was a labor of love writing that book. I've also written a series of children's picture books, so these would be really good for anyone aged 3 to 7. The first one is called Franklin's Flying Bookshop, the second is Franklin and Luna Go to the Moon, and the third is Franklin and Luna and the Book of Fairy Tales, and these are illustrated by the lovely Katie Harnett. These books are all about a book-loving dragon called Franklin and his best friend Luna and all the adventures they get up to. If you are a poetry fan, I have written a collection called The Girl Aquarium, which explores the history of the freak show, disfigurement and fairy tales. I've also written a short story collection for grown-ups called The Beginning of the World in the Middle of the Night. And if you like people like Kirsty Logan or Julia Armfield, I think you will get on with the stories in here. There's a lot of magical realism, a lot of playing around with storytelling and history of folklore, elements of horror, queerness, disability, disfigurement. You know the drill. If you've been here a while, you know the themes that I write about. And then finally, my most recent book is The Sister Who Ate Her Brothers and Other Gruesome Tales, illustrated by Adam D'Souza. This is primarily a middle grade book, so for 8 to 13-year-olds, but also for any adults in your life who enjoy a creepy tale or two. I have retold 14 fairy tales from around the world. And again, we have positive representation of queerness, disability and disfigurement, and it has a ribbon bookmark. And what doesn't scream Christmas gift if not a ribbon bookmark? Those are my books. If you would like to purchase any of them for someone in your life for Christmas or for yourself or for any other time of year, that would be really very lovely. Thank you. All right, let us dive into the personalized book recommendations. Get comfy because I feel like we may be here a while. I need to do some stretching. Okay, Lisa said, "Hi Jen, I would love a book recommendation for an old gentleman I go on walks with. He loves Chekhov, Chopin, chocolate and watching squirrels." There is a non-fiction book called In Praise of Paths by Torbjørn Eklund, I think his name is. He's Norwegian, and it's all about his love of nature and falling in love with nature again after he was diagnosed with epilepsy. So he wasn't driving, he was going on more walks. And I haven't read that one yet, but I've heard great things and it's sitting on my shelf. I'd also recommend The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry, which is a novel about a man called Harold who goes on a walk, a very long pilgrimage from Devon, I think it's Devon, to Northumberland, by Rachel Joyce. There's also a film of that coming out next year. Someone else said, "Hi Jen, I would like to start somewhere my friend would like to start somewhere in cozy mysteries. She's a baker and loves dogs. I'd like to give her a cozy mystery to start her off." I think I recommend these a lot in my Christmas gift guide videos, but there's a reason for that, and that is the British Library crime classic. So it's a whole series of cozy crime books, and I'll link their website in the description box down below. My favorite, I think, that I've read that they publish is the Santa Claus Murder, which has the extra bonus of being, you know, a Christmas book as well. Next, "Hi Jen, I would love a recommendation for a magical realism or literary fiction for my best friend. They are someone who isn't into fantasy but is into folklore and witch magic and thrilling aspect. I'd recommend Water Shall Refuse Them by Lucy McKnight Hardy, which has Shirley Jackson vibes, but is about witchcraft and the history of folklore, and very, very thrilling. Jess said, I would love a recommendation for a good friend of mine on themes of motherhood, female friendship, and mental illness. For this, I'd recommend Underbelly by Anna Whitehouse, which is about two women who meet after their kids become friends at school. It's one of my favourite books of the year. I loved it. Rebecca said, would love a book recommendation for my husband. He's a big fan of Matthew Riley, Joe Nesbo, Christian Cameron, etc. Bluebird, Bluebird by Attica Locke, which is the first in a series about Darren Matthews, who is a Texan ranger, or is he a sheriff? Are those the same thing? I can't remember. Anyway, it's crime and it's great. I love it. Next, someone said, I'm looking for something cozy but not mystery. Have you read The Other Bennett Sister by Janice Hadlow? Because it is the coziest thing and I really want to reread it already. It's fantastic. Hi Jen, I wondered if you have any recommendations for my mum for her Christmas book. She loves Eleanor Oliphant, Jojo Moyes, and more recently the Richard Osman books. I want her to read more diversely. This Green and Pleasant Land by Aisha Malik, which is just an absolute delight and will make you giggle and cry. Will make your mum giggle and cry. It's brilliant. Lee said, hi Jen, I'd love a fiction recommendation for a friend who is a marine biologist with a serious love of nature writing. She reads mostly literary fiction, travel writing, and is a Margaret Atwood fan. The Wolf Border by Sarah Hall gives me kind of Margaret Atwood vibes, I think, when she's not doing dystopian, because it's about the rewilding of wolves in the Lake District, and it's a really great look at motherhood as well. It's just a fantastic nature writing as well as motherhood writing. And then I'd also recommend Follow Me to Ground by Sue Rainsford, which is nature writing kind of, but in a really dark, twisted, witchy kind of way. Hi Jen, if possible, I would love a recommendation for a bibliophile friend who loves dark tales. She's asked for a book you'd want to read by a log fire. Her favourite book is The 13th Tale. Has she read Patricia Highsmith? I know I talk about Patricia Highsmith a lot, but it's because I adore her. If she hasn't read The Talented Mr. Ripley, then I would recommend that. And if not, then everything else that Patricia Highsmith has written as well. Also, Death in Her Hands by Tesha Moshfegh is definitely a dark tale. It's about... well, is it about a murder? It might be about a murder, but it's a very unreliable narrator, and she lives alone in the middle of the woods, and I think it will be a great one to read. Curled Up by the Fire. Irene said, hi Jen, I would like a book recommendation for a friend who loves fast-paced fiction about family and relationship issues. Her 5-star reads recently were Doreen, Purple Hibiscus, The Lady and the Unicorn, Little Fires Everywhere, thank you. Has she read Silver Sparrow by Tayari Jones? I wouldn't say it's hugely fast-paced, but it's definitely as fast-paced as the books that you have mentioned. And it's about two half-sisters. Only one of them knows the other one exists. And she starts stalking her half-sister because she wants to know more about her life. I think it's really intriguing. Sal said, hi Jen, my partner's 2 favourite books are The Road and The Old Man and the Sea. He also loves zombies. Okay, so... post-apocalyptic, possible zombies, but also literary. The Dreamers by Karen Thompson Walker, and also Under the Skin by Michelle Faber, which is one of my favourite books. Hi, I would love a recommendation for my brother-in-law. I know he has enjoyed books like M.K. Jemisin's Broken Earth trilogy and Bluebird, Bluebird by Attica Locke, so my impression is that he favours plot over character studies in his bookish escapism. He also enjoys cooking and teaching himself new skills. Well, I would say actually that those books, whilst they do have a lot of plot, I think they are quite character focused as well. So I would recommend The Last Place You Look by Kristen Lepionka, which is as plot focused and character focused as something like Bluebird, Bluebird by Attica Locke. I think they pair really well together. The Kristen Lepionka books are about a PI called Roxanne Weary who enjoys doing everything herself. So I guess in effect, learning new skills. Anna said, hi Jen, I'd love a recommendation of a book taking place in Ireland, dark, eerie story with folklore. Claire Keegan's books, if you're not familiar with them, pretty much all of them have a bit of a folklore-y feel to them, and also Sue Rainsford. Falconet said, I recently finished Neil Gaiman's The Graveyard Book, and I'm just craving some more wholesome, unconventional, supernatural folklore stories in a similar vein. I love how it plays with the darkness of its subject choices, but the lightness of the characters. Dark but lovable, I suppose, question mark. Pet by Akwaeke Emeze, I would say, is very much in the same vein as The Graveyard Book. It's about a young girl called Jam who has to save her friend redemption from a monster that's in his house, and she has to get the assistance of someone who other people may consider to be a monster. I don't want to say more, but it's definitely for fans of the Graveyard Book as well. Hi Jen, I'd like to hear your recommendations of some Persephone books to start with. I've long heard about them and I'm planning to get some for myself. Okay, then she goes on to ask about specifically Dorothy Whipple books. I actually haven't read any of the Dorothy Whipple books yet. That was a mouthful. I haven't read any Dorothy Whipple books yet, so I can't offer you a recommendation for her. But my favourite Persephone remains Doreen by Barbara Noble, which is about a young girl who's evacuated during the Second World War. But I will say, Persephone are amazing. Call them and speak to them, or email them and ask them for recommendations. They know their stock inside out and they are always so happy to help. So do that. Their recommendations will be better than mine. Kayla said, hey Jen, I'm looking for a book for my dad. He's into mysteries you'd find at the supermarket and he loves history. I've also given him horror books like Night Film and Bird Box and he's loved them. Thanks so much. Right, let's go for thriller to combine the horror mystery bit. And let's go for Land of the Living by Nikki French, which is one of their standalone books. And it's about a woman who is kidnapped and then escapes. But no one believes that she was kidnapped and she has to prove her case and she can't remember what happened. So she's trying to recall events, prove what happened to her, and solve the mystery. It's super compelling. Kate said, hi Jen, I would love a recommendation for a friend. Some of her favourite authors include Edward Carey, Erin Morgenstern, Jessie Burton and Elizabeth McNeil. She loves making curious objects, magical things, textiles and collecting stories. Has she read Jess Kidd? Because if she hasn't read Jess Kidd, I think probably that is where you should go. I'm looking for a recommendation for my mum. She typically likes historical fiction with possibly a hint of fairy tale to them, but nothing too heavy in its triggers. Books she recently read and enjoyed are the Winter Night trilogy, The Patchwork Girls, and there's more to this comment, but it's not about the book recommendations. Has she read The Snow Child? That is not one of my favourite books, but I know that so many people love it. And if she has read that, then there may be Elizabeth McNeil's books, The Doll Factory or Circus of Wonders. Rachel says, hi Jen, I'd love a book or series recommendation for my mum who's getting into long literary thrillers. She's finished and loved Tana French and Nikki French. Can you recommend anything similar, please? Thank you. I'd recommend the Kristen Lepionka series that I mentioned before. The first one is The Last Place You Look. I'd also recommend the book Girl 11 by Amy Suter Clark, which is about a woman who is a true crime podcaster, but she's also a sleuth. So she's trying to solve the crimes that she's presenting about, and I loved it. Sarah said, hi, I'm looking for either a book or author recommendation for my mum. She loves to travel, but unfortunately, due to her health and everything that is happening in the world at the moment, hasn't been able to recently. I'm looking for travel books or authors, preferably female authors, so she can live vicariously through them. Thank you. I'd recommend Wonderland by Ginny Reddy, which is a great nature book. And I'd also recommend Still Life by Josie George. This one I say tentatively because it is about not being able to explore because of health, but also noticing small nature things in the surroundings that you do have. So if you think that that might be something that your mum may enjoy, I highly recommend it. Josie's writing is wonderful and it's just a great look at the intersection of disabled life and nature writing. Someone else said, this might be a bit out there. I'm asking for cookbook recommendations. My partner loves cooking savoury foods and frequently cooks ottolenghi recipes from his Dishoom cookbook. He likes Middle Eastern, South Asian flavours, but I think he'd be happy to branch out too. He lives in a vegetarian household, so veggie cookbooks would be great. Anna Jones does amazing vegetarian food. I also recently bought this cookbook, which is mouth-watering. This is not a solely veggie cookbook, but I'm hoping to make many of these things veggie. I tried Omni Pork at lunchtime today, not for a recipe in here, but for something else I was making, and that's I think it's new vegan meat, which is great. The Meatless Farm company also do great substitute meats, so yeah, I would also recommend this. I haven't cooked from it yet, but everything in here just looks absolutely delicious. It's going to make me hungry looking at it, so if you want to research that one online. But yeah, Anna Jones does great veggie cookbooks, and Mira Soda as well. Someone else said, I would like a recommendation for a Christmas themed fiction that isn't cozy or romance. P.S. I've read the classics. All right. I would recommend When the Lights Go Out by Cara Spray, which is not cozy and it's not a romance. In fact, it's about climate emergency, but it's set on the run up to Christmas. So if that tickles your fancy, you can check that out. Martha said, hi Jen, can you recommend me something that gives me the same vibe as Piranesi? I love that book, but I have no idea what book could give me a similar feeling. I actually wrote an article about the books that Piranesi reminded me of, so I'll link that in the description box down below, because there were quite a few books that I talked about. Sigrid said, hi Jen, I'd like a recommendation for a friend who loves coming of age stories with a female protagonist, witches, sewing and feminism. All right, The Wilds by Julia Elliott is a collection of short stories that has a lot of witchy vibes, and most of those stories are coming of age stories as well, focused on women predominantly, and I thought it was great. I'd also recommend for older stories but still about finding yourself, The Batrock by Evie Wyld and also Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. I love those very much. My sister likes haunting, atmospheric, English country, isolated mansions with a creepy vibe, perfect for snuggling under a cozy blanket. I made a video about books set in haunted houses, and I will link that video in the description box down below, but primarily I'd recommend A Little Stranger by Sarah Waters. Hi Jen, my partner and I have started a new tradition of buying each other books to open and read on Christmas Eve. He loves D&D and high fantasy novels. He's also a fantastic baker, so any yummy cookbooks would be great. I actually don't have baking recommendation cookbooks, but I would recommend Pippa Middlehurst's book Dumplings and Noodles, which I've made so many things from, and kind of gives you a similar vibe to baking because you're making dumplings. And as for fantasy books, I'd recommend Arcadia by Ian Pearce, which pays homage to a lot of other fantasy books. And I know I've recommended that a lot over the years, but the recommendation still stands. It's great. Charlotte said, hi Jen, I would love a book recommendation for a friend, an avid reader who mainly reads literary fiction. She's a fan of yoga and spirituality. Is there a book you know that incorporates all of these things? A book that is literary fiction that looks at spirituality is something called Braised Pork by Anne Yu, which is about a woman whose partner dies, but in these mysterious circumstances, and she wants to understand what has happened to him, so she goes on this voyage. It is about magical but also spiritual connections, and I loved it. Jo said, hi Jen, a highlight of lockdown was making a new friend through my distance MA course. I'd love to get her a book this year. She likes character-driven, speculative fiction like the work of Becky Chambers. She's also a sex ed teacher with loads of knowledge about queerness and gender. She loved Detransition Baby. Frankenstein by Jeanette Winterson is all about queerness and gender, and also is character-driven, speculative fiction with a focus on Mary Shelley. So that probably is right up their street. I'd also recommend Kay O'Neill's books if you want something that's more heartwarming, because I can't not recommend that. And a queer book that I actually would like to recommend more, I seem to forget to recommend it, and that's Disobedience by Naomi Alderman. It's not speculative fiction, but it is character-driven queer fiction that I love. So take your pick from those ones. I'd love a recommendation for a cozy magical novel, preferably adult. Once Upon a River by Diane Setterfield probably will tick all of those boxes for you. Sarah said, hi Jen, I'd love a book rec for my sister who adores books about books, libraries and librarians like The Giant's House, The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry, The Book of Secrets, etc. The Borrower by Rebecca Mackay is about the joy of libraries. It's not really about conversion therapy, but it is about a librarian wanting to recommend books to a young queer child who's been rejected by their family. And I read that a long time ago, but I remember really liking it and it breaking my heart a little bit. There is what's her name? Genevieve Cogman series called The Invisible Library. I didn't love that, but if she's into steampunk librarian stuff, then maybe she will like that. But a book that I always think about when it comes to libraries is The Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland in a Ship of Her Own Making. It's a series, and I can't remember if the library's in the first or second one, but she makes friends with a wyvern who actually is half dragon or wyvern and half library, so he's a wyvery, and they go to this amazing magical library where all the books run havoc when no one else is paying attention to them. honestly, just thinking about it, it's so magical and wonderful. Love it. Janet says, hi Jen, I would love a book recommendation for my husband. He enjoys dystopian sci-fi books as well as non-fiction. He really liked the Henrietta Lacks books. Has he read Alexander Weinstein, who does great dystopian technology books? He's got 2 short story collections. The first one is Children of the New World, and the second one is Universal Love. They're both great. Trisha said, hi Jen, I would love a recommendation for a friend. She loves atmospheric, nostalgic writing at this time of year. I know she's really enjoyed Rebecca and the Secret History. She also enjoys Tana French's books. Fingersmith by Sarah Waters. Reading it right now. It's one of me keeping on my shelf for a rainy day because I knew I would love it. It is as brilliant as everybody says it is. Atmospheric, wonderful, set in an old house, queer relationships. Yes. Would also recommend Passing by Nella Larson, which is atmospheric in an entirely different way, set in 1920s Harlem, written at the same time. So it is from that time. And it's about colorism and racism and female friendships and betrayal. And it's so good. And said, hi Jen, I would like a recommendation for my own wish list. I really want to read more books by authors from outside the US, UK that I don't have to think much about to understand, something that I can read after uni took away all my brain power. I have loads of videos on work and translation, which I'll link in the description box down below, but Yoko Ogawa's Revenge is one of my favourite books. Marie says, hi Jen, I would love some recommendations for comic books for my kids, for daughters for Christmas. Okay, so graphic novels, short graphic novels, I would recommend Aquacorn Cove and Princess Ever After, both by Kay O'Neill. Both will make all of your hearts very happy. Paulina said, I would love to get a book recommendation for my sister. She's 19, enjoys fantasy. She loves fairy tales and retellings, especially Little Red Riding Hood and Hansel and Gretel. She likes some dark stories, but nothing too gory or with bugs. I don't think Blue Beyond Blue by Lauren Slater has bugs in. No, but it does have fairy tale retellings, fantasy, and it's great storytelling. Hey Jen, my dad likes mystery/thrillers. He has a huge collection of Agatha Christie. I usually buy him the sort of biggest bestseller of the genre. Do you have any more obscure, underrated mystery thrillers to surprise him with? The Will to Kill by R.V. Roman, and it sounds like Agatha Christie meets Knives Out. And I'm excited to read it myself over Christmas. Rosie said, hi Jen, would you have any recommendations for my mum? She's looking for a coffee table book that is beautiful and has dark, gothic, creepy sort of vibes. Any of Audrey Niffenegger's graphic novels, Sean Tan's graphic novels, especially The Arrival, beautiful, can be left on a coffee table, lovely. The Gigantic Beard That Was Evil by Stephen Collins, I think is a wonderful coffee table book to have. It is heartwarming, but also creepy and eerie at the same time. If she wants something really dark, then something like The Resurrectionist, which is this fake graphic non-fiction book about a man who cut up corpses to make magical mythical creatures, and grave robbers did used to do this in the Victorian times when we were trying to understand magical mythical creatures, but this is written as if this person really did exist, but he didn't. He's just inspired by lots of historical characters. It's really weird though, so if that's something you want on your coffee table, go for it. Grace said, if you have time, I would love to know your thoughts on a book for my mammy. She loves anything with island or Irish history in it, centered around women, and if it has the sea/coast in it, all the better. So Ghost in the Throat by Doreen Griffith is about the history of Irish poetry, but also motherhood as well, and it has a bit of a gothic feel to it. And then there's also After the Silence by Louise O'Neill, which is a murder mystery set in West Cork, and it is set by the sea as well, and the sea plays quite a big part. Something for my husband who loves Cormac McCarthy and Steinbeck. Deep Water by Patricia Highsmith, set in the 50s, is this unsettling book about a man and woman who are in a marriage that is definitely not going the way that they would have hoped. There are affairs left, right and centre, and perhaps murders too. Selena said, hey Jen, I'm looking for a book for my grandfather. He loves history and coins, maybe a bit random. Hopefully you can think of a book. There is a book by Raymond Chandler which has a coin mystery in it. I haven't read it myself, but it is the third in the Philip Marlowe series called The High Window. I think you can read them in any order though, but Philip Marlowe has been called to this case where someone has stolen a very rare coin and he has to solve the mystery. Mia said, hey Jen, my brother 17 loves Lord of the Rings and Sherlock Holmes, and big fantasy books with lots of world building and strategy, and also repairing old bikes, a recommendation would be amazing. Like with the one above, one I haven't read but I know, there is a Sherlock Holmes mystery which involves bicycles, which is The Adventure of the Priory School, and there's also The Adventure of the Solitary Cyclist. I assume maybe he's read those if he's really into Sherlock Holmes already. I don't know, but for big fantasy world building, I have to again recommend Arcadia by Ian Pearce. Hey Jen, a book like James Thurber's 13 Clocks would be a dream. So Crystal Eaters by Shane Jones is about a world where you have crystals, kind of like a computer game, but like that you need in order to live. And I know in James Thurber's 13 Clocks, you can cry, or certain characters can cry jewels, and that's to turn back time. So I feel like thematically maybe quite similar. Definitely look up Crystal Eaters, see if it's something that you think would appeal. Tegan said, hey Jen, I'd love to get my mum a book. She loves spooky, gory, scary TV shows. She also loves animals and the countryside. I was going to recommend English Animals by Laura Kay, but it does have taxidermied animals in there, but it is also about loving animals, but it's gothic and it's set in the countryside in a, not a haunted house, but definitely a creepy house with some weird toxic relationships. And it's brilliant. It's so good. Jacqueline said, I have little people to buy for, a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 6-year-old. All right, so for the 2 and 3-year-olds, I would recommend Dragon Post. There's also Santa Post, which I think came out this year or last year, so that might be a good shout, but Dragon Post is great. It's like the Jolly Postman, you know, it has all these letters that you can take out and unfold, and kids love it. I'd also recommend Prudence and Her Amazing Adventure. And for the 6-year-old, if I may, I would recommend Franklin's Flying Bookshop by me. Lily said, hi Jen, it's me again. I'd like to find a novel for my sister and maybe for me too. She likes mangas, steampunk universes and video games such as Final Fantasy. Oh, and someone else said, I'd love a book idea for my 16-year-old daughter. She loved the Banana Fish series and Percy Jackson series. She likes to be part of fandoms. So for both of these, I would recommend The Lonely Castle in the Mirror by Mizuki Teshimura. And this is about a group of teenagers who go through a mirror into this castle and they have to solve a mystery. Well, that kind of is false advertising. They go into a castle, each from their individual bedrooms where they then meet, and they're told that there is a key hidden somewhere in the castle if they want to find it. But it's really about them connecting with each other, feeling very lonely in their own spaces. There is a bit to do with video games in there as well, mainly about community and coming together. And it's just this great Japanese novel. I would highly recommend it. Romina said, hi Jen, I would like to buy my grandmother a book. She enjoyed Miss Benson's Beetle by Rachel Joyce a lot. I'd recommend Remarkable Creatures by Tracy Chevalier, which is also about 2 women and the friendship that they have. It's set, when is it set? At the beginning of the 1800s, and it's about the discovery of dinosaur bones. It's very atmospheric. Jessica said, hi Jen, my mum and I love reading a book together during the run up to Christmas. It's sort of an early Christmas present for both of us. I read it out loud to her rather than a buddy read. So I'm looking for something cozy and Christmassy but not too cheesy. Some books we've both loved this year with The House on the Cerulean Sea, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, etc, etc. Okay, I would recommend The Snow Garden by Rachel Joyce. It's a collection of short stories that are all Christmas themed, and I think it would be a really lovely one to read out. Sarah said, hey Jen, I'm looking for a gift for a friend who has recently shifted from reading high fantasy books to books featuring magical realism. I'm looking for some recommendations. I'm looking for books that feature rural magic and that have a mystical element to it. The Blue Girl by Laurie Foos is set in a rural community where there is a young girl who is rumoured to be blue who can take away, is it sins that she can take away? Or she can get rid of your lies. It's quite unsettling and definitely inspired by folklore. Hi Jen, could you recommend a book for my nearly 11-year-old daughter? She's a very good reader. I want her to move on to more challenging books, but don't want the content to be too adult for her. She loves most genres, but particularly murder mystery books and fantasy, like the Murder Most Unladylike series and the School for Good and Evil series. So Evelyn Jones series is pretty good. There's also the Agatha Oddly series. I haven't read that one myself, but heard good things. Both books by Elle McNichol. feed those to her. I'm sure that she will love them. There's also The Infinite by Patience Agbaby. Hi Jen, I'm looking for a book or series for someone who really enjoyed Juliet Marilla's Seven Water series, as well as The Crimson Petal and the White by Michelle Faber. Aside from reading them, they are also into astrology and other new age or supernatural things. So how about a book for the time being by Ruth Ozeki, because that is about spiritualism, but it's also quite epic, like The Crimson Petal and The White, and it has this magical feel to it. And if also they're into astrology and other new age things, maybe tying that in with the historical nature of Crimson Petal and the White, I might recommend something like Margaret I by Danielle Dutton, who was very much into astrology and literature and finding her own voice, and it's set in the 1600s and it's great. Matthew said, can you recommend a kid's book about a bookish girl who has a friend who has some sort of mythical creature? Again, I would recommend Pet by Akweke Emeze. And he also said, can you recommend something millennial and office setting for my work wife? How about There's No Such Thing as an Easy Job by Kikiko Tsumura? Hi Jen, I would like to buy my 12-year-old son a book for Christmas. He is not a big reader, but has enjoyed books on World War II in the past. He's into boxing, video games, and I feel like he would enjoy a graphic novel more than anything. Thank you. Well, how about The Boy with Wings by Lenny Henry, which does have a comic book in it, and it does have a focus on video games and sport as well. It's a lot of fun, as well as having these magical elements. I'd like a book request for my sister who's pregnant and will go on maternity leave at Christmas. I'm looking for something that's relaxing and can be handled with possibly hormonal scattered brain. She was thinking of doing some crafting, so bonus points if there's a great audiobook version of it. For some reason, I want to recommend The Secret Lives of Church Ladies by Disha Filyar, which I wouldn't say is particularly relaxing. I don't know why I want to recommend it. It is about family and complicated family. I think the narrator has quite a soothing voice in it. And I know the audiobook's supposed to be amazing, so I'd recommend that. But also Tracy Chevalier's books about crafting, like A Single Thread or The Lady and the Unicorn. Those are all about making things, so I think would work well if you were also crafting yourself. And then also Carol by Patricia Highsmith, which is a Christmas book. And again, I'm not sure why I find it relaxing, maybe because the film is relaxing. But I just think it's a charming book and I would recommend it to anyone. Anyway, hi Jen, can you please recommend a book for me? I really liked Conversations with Friends, so I'm looking for something similar. Also, I would like, there are lots of requests here. Okay, so for something like Conversations with Friends, Painting Time by Melise de Carangel is about a group of art student friends who all have intertwined relationships. Something similar to the Haunting of Hill House series. I have, as I mentioned before, a whole series of, a whole video about books set in haunted houses, so I'll link that down below. And a book that shows complicated relationships within families. Ponti by Charlene Teo is about complicated relationships between a mother and a daughter. And Transcendent Kingdom by Yaa Gyasi is a brilliant book looking at complicated relationships between siblings, but also between mother and daughter and mother and son. It's about religion and science, and it was shortlisted for the Women's Prize this year. It's great. I would like a recommendation for a book that has queer elements, food, maybe some sort of dark academia vibes. I mean, Fingersmith by Sarah Waters is queer, does have mentions of food. So far not food I would like to eat, and gives me dark academia vibes. Also, What She's Having is a collection of short stories by lots of different people about women and their relationship with food. It's got horror elements, and some of them are queer stories. Jen, I'm looking for a book for a friend who's about to become a first-time mum, who's also apprehensive as a reproductive health journalist. The Republic of Motherhood by Liz Berry is a short chat book that I always give to friends whenever they have a baby. I just think it is a comforting companion to have. Like, as I said, it's super short and it's not going to tell you that everything's going to be fine, but it gives voice to the kind of panic and unease that you can have as a new parent, and I think it's great. As I'm filming this is the last request that has come in. Hey Jen, I was wondering if you could recommend a fictional book of any genre about a strong cousin or sister bond. Thank you in advance. The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett, and what says sisterly bond than cleaning up after your sister's murders? So My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyakun Braithwaite is probably a fun one to gift as well. All right. Those are all the recommendations and those are all the requests that I had at the time of filming this video. If you've since left a request, I will try and get to it over on that video. If you didn't get to leave a request in time, you can leave it on this video in a comment down below and I'll try and get to it. I hope that that was helpful. And as I said, if you would like me to do a generic gift guide video where I'm recommending beautiful gift type books that you might like to give to loved ones or to yourself, let me know and I can film that next week. Whew, I think I'm gonna go make myself a cup of tea. I hope you're all doing okay. If you enjoy my channel and would like to support me on Patreon, that would be very kind. I'll leave links in the description box down below. I hope you're all doing okay and I will speak to you very soon. Sending lots of love. Bye.